Hey guys, welcome to Critical Flick. Today I'm reviewing the premiere episodes of Under the Banner of Heaven from FX on Hulu. So the first two episodes of Under the Banner of Heaven just premiered on Hulu, and I was really excited to check this out because it stars Andrew Garfield as a detective who's looking into some crimes, particularly a double homicide that took place that involves the Church of Latter-day Saints, based on a nonfiction book that's based on a real story. It takes place in 1984 in a small suburb in Utah. So if you know anything about a lot of the places in Utah, there's a lot of members of the Church of Latter-day Saints that live there, or you might know them as Mormons. And this story really revolves around a conflict between that church, the law, and like one man's personal struggles to balance the two. The first episode, Andrew Garfield arrives to a house where a crime has been committed. He discovers that a woman and her child have been brutally murdered, and they quickly come upon their husband and take him into custody and start questioning him because obviously he's the number one suspect, and they want to dive into like how this happened, what is happening. Quickly find that this husband is a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, particularly a very influential family called the Laffertys. And as the story moves along, you really dive into the origins of the Mormon Church and how everything started with Joseph Smith. There's actually quite a few flashbacks that take you back to that time. And it's an interesting way of telling the story because while, the husband is being interrogated, it'll often flash back to, like I said, back to the early days of the Mormon Church, or back to when he first met his wife and he was introducing him to his really, really strict family. That's something I didn't expect from the show. I didn't know that they were going to be diving back into the origins of the church, but I find that to be an interesting element because it creates a better understanding of what's happening and maybe some of the ideologies and where it was sparked from. Like I said, the first episode is kind of setting everything up. They're going in there, they're discovering this crime, they're interrogating the people that were involved and what might have happened. And it really is mostly set up. The first episode, I did enjoy it, but it really is introducing you to the characters. It's showing you kind of flashbacks how everything started, creating these emotional connections to these people, showing how their personalities may have clashed and created this conflict. One of the parts of the show that I actually do really enjoy is the use of tension, and particularly when Brenda, who is the new girlfriend, is introduced to this family, the Lafferty family, who's this very strict, sect of Latter-day Saints. There's just a ton of tension. It's just building and building. Every moment that they're on screen, you feel like someone's going to freak out or something's going to really bad is going to happen. And this movie does a really good job of, like I said, ratcheting up that tension. And that's something that really keeps you on the edge of your seat. These episodes are, over an hour long, at least the first two are. And I never felt like it was too terribly slow, but it definitely is just, it's kind of like it pulls at you the whole time. You're just waiting for something really bad to happen. And speaking of the family, the Lafferty family, the patriarch of the family, the father played by Christopher Heyerdahl, he's really good in this show because it's this fire and brimstone, this really intense Latter-day Saints kind of pastor type character, and he's just so intense all the time, and he's kind of scary. He's very ominous. You never know what he's going to do. You see in the second episode he's committed some really kind of terrible acts. It really sets up this conflict of someone who is very staunchly for their church. They don't care about anyone or anything, whether that's the government or new people coming in and trying to be introduced into his family. So obviously it creates that tension, like I said, and his character in particular is just really ominous. Andrew Garfield's very good in the show, as he is in basically everything that he's done over the past few years, because he's really at a conflict. A very devout member of LDS, and he is always at this conflict because he believes in this. He feels that, his church is true and he loves his church, but then he's seeing kind of the bad side of what happens. And I think that's a really interesting concept that is explored in a lot of shows and television, is that you get to see, this conflict of the people that are good in a church, the good ideas, the good things about church, and maybe how that can be twisted and corrupted, and that conflict that takes place. You always see these extremes. Even when there's the best intentions, things just get taken a little too far. And this show definitely shows that and shows how that could happen in reality. Bill Birmingham plays Bill, who's Andrew Garfield's partner at his precinct. And he comes from Las Vegas. He's a more grizzled cop. He isn't this, pie in the sky type individual, not a very religious individual. He's in this community that's dominated by LDS individuals. He's kind of an outsider. So his character creates like a really strong contrast that I think adds to the show, because he's someone who doesn't have an interest in the church. He's not there seeing it through this kind of rose-colored glasses. He's seeing it as a real grizzled cop who's seen some horrible things when he worked in Las Vegas. So his character is really interesting. He's very well played. He definitely plays off of Andrew Garfield's character really well because they're kind of the opposites of each other. Some of the best scenes, in my opinion, are those conflicts. When you see Andrew Garfield, he's trying to give people the benefit of the doubt because they're a member of the church, and if they say anything bad about the church, he has this very strong negative reaction, almost like an illogical reaction to that attack on his church. So you're seeing it as someone who wants to uphold law, he wants to help people, he wants to get to the bottom of this case, but then he's at conflict because it leads more and more to believe that maybe the Church of Latter-day Saints is involved somehow. The second episode of the series, while the first one focuses on the backstory and the crime and kind of setting up the characters, the second episode dives into the conflict of this Lafferty family against the government. There seems to be this constant struggle back and forth between the church and the state, as we've seen throughout all history. This story is showing how the Laffertys, they don't believe they need to pay taxes. They think it's an attack on their religion. They feel like they're being persecuted. People are coming after the government is like the big bad guy that's constantly trying to put them down. And it makes them become almost an extremist group. There you see that they're building up weapons. They're trying to do everything they can to just stop the police from taking away what they think is rightfully theirs, but they're not paying taxes. They're not following the rules that they should be following. So it creates this conflict, and you're seeing this almost militia mentality as it's building and building. And like I said, the tension of the show is one of the things that makes it that much more interesting to watch. Wyatt Russell plays Dan Lafferty, who is the oldest son in the family, and he kind of takes over this business that they're running. They're chiropractors. They run a business out of this kind of, farmhouse, and the father leaves, the big, scary fire and brimstone father. He goes out on a mission, and he puts him in charge of the family and the finances and everything. And you're seeing him unravel, because in the first episode, he seems a little off, but he's a little more playful. He's a little, he's odd, but you don't know maybe what's happening with him. But then the second episode, you're seeing the weight of his responsibilities and the weight of being, the man of this Latter-day Saints community is really starting to bog him down and make him a little bit crazy. Overall, I feel like all the performances are really solid. I think the writing is definitely very sharp. Being based off of a novel always seems to help things out. And the fact that it is based at least somewhat on a true story makes it that much more compelling to me. I definitely am interested in what's happening. Like I said, it's a very classic kind of true crime detective story where you're trying to unravel the thread. You're trying to see what's happening. It's like a more realistic version, in my opinion, of a show like The Sinner, which I absolutely love, which we've reviewed on the channel, or something maybe along the lines of Mindhunter, maybe not to that degree. I absolutely love Mindhunter. It's probably my favorite, one of, if not my favorite show of all time. But I think Andrew Garfield's performance, the themes, the messaging that's going on here is really powerful, because like I said, it is this, church versus state mentality. It's this conflict of your own personal beliefs and what you see as your church and your religion as being perfect, and then kind of having that kind of broken down in front of you. That's one of the things about the scenes with Andrew Garfield kind of coming to grips with this conflict within himself, is that it does a style of storytelling where instead of him saying how he's feeling or expressing his issues or his, questioning of his faith, there's flashes of images that show, maybe what he's seen or how he can relate to his own family or his own children, and just that kind of building up inside of him. I know we're going to have moments, I'm sure, where he's going to absolutely lose it. You had a few moments where you see him emotionally struggling with what's happening around him, but definitely the show really pulls at the emotions that humans feel when it comes to religion and family and government and those huge overarching ideas that dominate your everyday life. And the show does a really good job of, having these performances portray people that are in these struggles. Those are my thoughts on the first two episodes. I can't wait to see where it's going. Like I said, they're pretty long. The first two episodes were a lot of setup. It's a lot of exposition, kind of setting up where the story's going, who the characters are. There are a ton of characters. This is a huge family. You have Andrew Garfield and his family. You have his, his partner. There's a lot of moving parts to follow. And like I said, it flashes back and forth between way back to the beginning of the Mormon Church to, a few years ago to modern times. And it does it in a way that I feel like isn't confusing, and it's definitely moving the story along because someone's being interrogated or they're expressing, their beliefs as a member of the Latter-day Saints. And it does a good job of blending those two, but I could see how maybe it would get a little overbearing. It's definitely a heavy show. It's not a show that you kind of pop on and just enjoy in the background. There's a lot going on, a lot of heavy themes, like I said. So if you check it out, I definitely recommend would try to make it through it. Maybe if you didn't enjoy the first episode, I feel like the second episode picks up a little bit, and I'm sure as it moves along, it'll really start to unravel and make it that much more interesting. So those are my thoughts on the first two episodes. If you saw it, let me know what you think about it. Are you excited? What are your theories? What are you excited to see? Are you maybe you didn't enjoy it? What didn't you like about the first two episodes? Leave those comments down below. Remember to like and subscribe. See you guys next time.